Okay, I've just pressed my casing up and my seam allowance down, and now we're ready for step 11. It says, cut a piece of elastic the length of the waist elastic guide piece 6. So this was one of those pattern pieces that you needed to cut out, but we didn't actually cut out a fabric. If you don't have it or you've misplaced it, it's not the end of the world. What I would do is probably cut a piece of elastic about enough to go around your waistband. So kind of like put the elastic around you and pull it a little bit, and that'll be how long you need it to be. So we're the end of my piece of elastic and kind of lay it flat, and then I'm making a medium, so I'm gonna lay it all the way down to the medium guide, and I'm not pulling on it or anything, it's not stretched yet, and I'm just gonna snip it here. After that, insert elastic through the opening in the casing. Overlap ends and hold with a safety pin. So the easiest way to do this is like when a drawstring falls out of a hoodie, grab a safety pin. So we did this with our drawstring bags, and I have a pretty big safety pin here, which is fine as long as it'll fit through your opening. And what I'm gonna do is hook the safety pin on the end of the elastic. This is going to be basically my pusher. It's gonna be my guide for my elastic through the pajama pants, or through the casing. So find your opening, which now should be on the inside. And all you're gonna do is put the elastic in with the safety pin on it, push the fabric up on the safety pin, hold the safety pin, and then pull the casing down. So, hold on, sorry. Safety pin got kind of caught weirdly in there. Okay, so bunch up the fabric on the safety pin, hold the safety pin, pull the fabric down. So you're gonna do that all the way around your casing. Okay, I've gotten back to where my opening is, so I'm gonna push my safety pin out. And you'll notice that nothing is laying flat right now, right? Because we want our pants to be stretchy, otherwise they're not gonna stay up at our waist. So it's okay if your waistband is not laying completely flat and it's all bunched up like that. We're gonna kind of move our waistband around. All I'm doing is kind of like unscrunching it towards where all this extra elastic is. So just kind of holding the elastic in place and then pulling the waistband towards where my extra elastic was fed in, okay? And then it says to safety pin your elastic together, the ends together. So my end is way over here. I can already tell these are gonna be a little bit too big. I did make the mediums because I like my loungewear to be comfy. So I'm gonna safety pin it here, and then what I'm gonna do is try them on. And what I'm looking for is, do they feel okay? Are they tight enough that they're gonna stay up, but not too tight that they're cutting off circulation, okay? So kind of adjust, try them on at this point, and adjust your elastic. You can always cut off the extra elastic, okay? So I'm gonna try mine on, and then I might pull my elastic tighter if I need them to be tighter. I might move the safety pin down on the extra elastic if I need them to be looser. So at this point, I tried my pants on. A good test is to put a phone in your pocket. If it pulls your pants down, you might want to make them a little tighter. So now I can cut off this excess elastic. My ends are still pinned together, or not my ends, but my end is pinned to where I want the elastic to stop. So I'm going to cut off the extra elastic, and then gently and carefully, because you don't want to lose one of your ends, otherwise you're going to have to feed it through again. You're going to go ahead and unpin your elastic. Now, one thing you want to be careful of here is quickly kind of feel around the edges to make sure that your elastic isn't twisted, so it didn't like flip over on itself. So when you sew this together, you want your ends to be overlapping so that your elastic isn't going to twist. So right now, I accidentally twisted my elastic the way that I pulled this out and overlapped them. So it looks like I want this one to be on top. Yeah. Okay, so make sure that when you sew this, hold on, I'm tripping myself out. No, I feel like that's still gonna be twisted. Flip it over this way and this way. feel around for a minute. All right, so it says to overlap the ends. So what I have here is my 2 ends, and notice that they're not up like this, they are overlapped, and then you're gonna sew across them with only getting the elastic. Don't sew them to the pants. Sorry, I think I kind of jumped ahead in the directions here. Let's go back to the directions and read. Sorry. It says try on pants and adjust fit. So that's what I did. Adjust the elastic to fit comfortably so that the top of the casing is 1 inch below your natural waistline. So remember, your natural waistline is kind of about where your belly button is or a little bit lower. Okay, then it says stitch ends of the elastic together securely. So if you look at their picture, they make a box. So I'll show you how to do that with just, it's pivoting on your machine. It's not hard, but you don't want to just do one straight stitch. If you do one straight stitch, you're going to pull your elastic when you're putting them on, and it's just going to snap apart because the thread isn't strong enough to hold it in place. So you do want to either make a box, or you could do some seam finishing on it like stitch 13, and you want to go back and forth a couple times across the elastic. Okay, so like I said before, we're only sewing on our elastic. We aren't sewing on any, like we're not sewing on the fabric at this step. So the only thing underneath my presser foot right now is the elastic. There's no fabric under there because all I want to do is stitch the ends of my elastic together. So if you want to make a box, I took a couple stitches forward. I'm going to back stitch. Then I get to the edge of my elastic. I'm going to stop, lift my presser foot, and pivot. Again, making sure my elastic's laying on top of each other. Okay, and you're not gonna see this when you're done. So if it gets a little messy, it's okay as long as your elastic is held together. Like I said, you can always do a seam finish in there if you don't want to do the box, but you don't want just one layer of stitching. Because if you have just one layer of stitching, when you apply any pressure to it, it's going to just rip out. Okay? So then the next step of step 12 is to slip stitch opening edges of casing together. Slip stitch is a hand sewing stitch, so I will show you how to do that next. Okay, you should have a hand sewing needle from sewing on your button. And so now we're gonna slip stitch, which basically means we're just bringing, I fed my elastic in there, we're bringing this edge of our casing to this edge of our casing. It's gonna be met up, basically, and we're sewing that opening shut. So you're gonna put your string on your needle, bring it so that the ends of it are even, and you're gonna tie a knot. So I have both my ends down here, and then my needle is on the other end, maybe 10, 20 inches. And so all I'm gonna do, you don't need that much to do this, but I'm gonna tie my ends together by tying a knot. So there's my 2 pieces of thread, wrap it around my finger, pull it off my finger, slip my ends through. And I want 2 knots because 1 is gonna pull through the fabric. You maybe even want 3. I always just do 3 so that I don't have to go back and redo it if it comes out. So I'm gonna tie 1 more, and what I'm trying to do is get my knots to be on top of each other. So depending on where the knot's going, I'm either pulling the right side or the left side to get that loop to end up where my knots are. So I have 3 knots on top of each other, and now I'm ready to hand sew. I would do this with a color thread that blend into your waistband. I'm doing it with a contrasting color so that you can see what I'm doing. And when you slip stitch, you're bringing these 2 edges together. The reason why this is a hand sewn stitch is because we don't want to see it from the right side of our garment, okay? So what you're gonna do is go in first, so we wanna hide the knot. So first start by going underneath. That way your knot's gonna end up on the inside of your garment or on the inside of your casing. So I'm just gonna tuck those tails into my pants. I'm going to slide the needle into the folded edge on the other side of my casing and then back out. And then I'm going to go to the left side of my casing and slide the needle into my folded edge and come back out. So all you're doing is essentially you're bringing the edges together. Now I'm going into the folded edge, so I'm just grabbing about, like, I don't know, maybe a couple millimeters of fabric. And then I'm going into the folded edge of my casing again on the other side. So you're just going from left to right into that folded edge, so that at the end, you shouldn't be able to see any thread, because where you're going in and out is where you're bringing together. I think my thread got a little tangled, so I'm just gonna untangle that. Pull again. There we go. So now I'm on the left side. I'm gonna grab that folded edge. Sorry, it's hard to watch what I'm doing and watch the camera at the same time. Into the folded edge. Back out. Left to right, left to right. Until your entire opening is closed. So somehow some of my opening, maybe I could have stitched a little bit further when I was doing those dots, got to the front of my waistband, but it's not the end of the world because we're sewing it closed anyway. Okay, so once you get your opening sewn shut, so here's on the one side, and even though I use a contrasting thread, you can't even see, I mean, you can see it a little bit, but you shouldn't be able to see much thread from the right side of your fabric. And then once you have your last stitch, what you're gonna do is, instead of pulling it all the way through, see how I have a loop there? Put your needle through the loop and then pull. Then that way your knot ends up really close to the fabric and you can trim the rest of your thread. So again, I'm just gonna grab some of those previous stitches or a little piece of fabric, pull it until you have a smaller loop. Okay, so there's my loop, and put your needle through and pull. Then that way your knot ends up super close. And of course I get a tangle, so it looks horrible. I'm gonna try and tuck it in. But you should have a knot that ends up super close to your fabric, and then you can cut your extra thread, put your needle in your pin cushion. Let me see if I can get rid of that. And the other thing that we need to do is take out our base stitches. So you can go ahead and seam rip those base stitches at this point as well. Be careful not to grab. Sometimes it's hard to seam rip on knit fabric because it grabs the thread loops. So just be careful to get your basting stitch only, not your actual fabric. So the last step of step 12 says to distribute fullness evenly, which just basically means like kind of scooch your waistband around your elastic and remove your basting. So I just did that. Then it says tip, to secure elastic so it won't twist in wearing, stitch through all thicknesses of casing in the groove of each seam. So if you would like to do that, first check to make sure that your elastic is distributed fully. So what that just means is making sure that your elastic is pretty even all the way around, like it's not all scrunched up, your waistband's not all scrunched up in one section. And then the tip that they're giving you is to prevent the elastic from twisting, you're going to stitch in the groove of each seam. So on each side seam, you would, there's my nasty knot, but if you would stitch in the groove of the seam right here through the elastic and the waistband. And then on this side, you would also stitch through the elastic and the waistband up here.